The galaxy's most advanced artificial intelligence had missed it. 12 different alien species with enhanced cognitive abilities had overlooked it. But Dr. Lin Chen couldn't stop seeing it, a pattern hidden in the cosmic noise, pulsing like a heartbeat beneath the random data streams flowing across her holographic display. "You're experiencing pareidolia, Dr. Chen," Chief Researcher Zhuangxtao said, their crystalline form refracting the soft blue light of the Galactic Research Institute's quantum computers. "Like your ancestors seeing faces in clouds or hearing words in white noise. We expected better from you." Lin's fingers trembled as she manipulated the data stream, but her voice remained steady. "With respect, Chief Researcher, humans didn't just survive on Earth by seeing faces in clouds. We survived by noticing subtle changes in wind patterns before storms, by reading barely visible tracks in the forest, by burning fossil fuels and nearly destroying your planet," Zhuangxtao interrupted. "Your species only achieved space travel 70 years ago. The collective has been exploring the cosmos for millennia. Our systems are perfect. But they weren't perfect." Lin knew it with the same certainty that had helped her ancestors predict weather patterns from aching joints or sense predators from inexplicable chills. The data streams from thousands of stellar monitoring stations were showing something. Something urgent. "Look here," she said, isolating a sequence. "Every 47 minutes, there's a fluctuation in the background radiation. It's subtle, but it's accelerating. The pattern repeats across different sectors, different wavelengths, like random noise," Zhuangxtao said firmly. "Your primitive pattern-seeking brain is manufacturing meaning where none exists. This discussion is terminated." As the chief researcher glided away, Lin stared at the streams of data, her heart pounding. The pattern was there, growing stronger, more insistent. And now she noticed something else, something that made her blood run cold. The time between pulses wasn't just shortening. It was counting down. She quickly copied the data to her personal device, her hands shaking. The collective might have mastered faster-than-light travel and colonized 1,000 worlds, but they had engineered away something crucial in their drive for perfection, the ability to see patterns in chaos, to feel truth in noise. And if she was right about what this pattern meant, they had less than 30 days before everything they had built would come crashing down. Lin took a deep breath and began to run the calculations again. Sometimes the oldest powers were the strongest ones. And humanity's gift for finding signal in noise might be the only thing that could save them all. The quantum computer's holographic display cast eerie shadows across Lin's small quarters as she worked through the night cycle. She had requested an old-fashioned physical whiteboard, a request that had earned strange looks from the station's requisitions AI, but there was something about the feel of marker on surface that helped her think. The board was now covered in equations, diagrams, and the kind of intuitive leaps that the collective's AIs would dismiss as illogical cognitive shortcuts. But those shortcuts had saved her life more than once during her early days as a deep space surveyor. A soft chime announced an incoming communication. "Dr. Chen." The crystalline face of assistant researcher Venri appeared in her airspace. Unlike most of the collective species, the crystallines could express emotion through subtle changes in their refraction patterns. Right now, Venri was showing concern. "I've been reviewing your recent data requests. They're unusual." Lin studied her young colleague's shifting patterns. Venri was only 200 years old, practically a child by crystalline standards. And unlike most of their species, they hadn't completely dismissed human intuition. "I need historical data from the archival temples," Lin said, turning her whiteboard away from the holographic pickup. "Specifically, any records of similar radiation patterns from the ancient Exodus period." Venri's crystalline surface clouded slightly, their equivalent of a frown. "Those records are restricted. The Exodus period was chaotic. Many species were lost." "Exactly," Lin said, her heart racing. "And I think I know why. Look at this." She transmitted a data sequence she'd isolated. This isn't just a pattern in background radiation. It's a warning. The young crystalline's surface rippled with interest as they analyzed the data. The mathematical progression is concerning. But the chief researcher has already dismissed it, I know. Lynn started pacing, her mind racing ahead of her words. But something's happening. The collective's perfect systems are starting to show tiny errors. Haven't you noticed? Venri hesitated. There have been anomalies. The quantum networks on Proxima Station experienced a 2-microsecond delay yesterday. And the gravity generators on 3 outer colonies reported minor fluctuations. Minor now, Lynn said. But growing. Like tremors before an earthquake. She took a deep breath. I need access to those archives, Venri. I think whatever caused the ancient exodus is happening again. The young crystalline surface went completely still, a sign of deep distress. That's impossible. The exodus was a myth, a cautionary tale about the dangers of uncontrolled expansion. The collective's histories are incomplete, Lynn interrupted. Every species that survived that period tells a different story. But they all agree on one thing, it happened fast. Whole civilizations disappeared in days. Venri's form shimmered with decision. I cannot officially grant you access. But, there may be a way. The temple's security systems will be offline for routine maintenance in 6 hours. You would have approximately 12 minutes before the backups engage. Lynn felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you, Venri. Her words were cut off by a station-wide alert. The holographic displays flickered, showing cascading system failures across 3 sectors. And in the corner of her vision, Lynn saw the pattern she'd been tracking: pulse once, twice, and change. The countdown had accelerated. We don't have 6 hours, she whispered, grabbing her portable interface. Whatever's coming, it's already started. Venri's crystalline surface fractured with alarm patterns. Dr. Chen, what are you going to do? Lynn was already heading for the door, her mind racing ahead to map contingencies, possibilities, patterns within patterns. Something illogical, she said. Something human. Because sometimes, she knew, the only way to solve a problem was to break all the rules trying to solve it. And humanity had always excelled at that particular skill. The archival temple's security protocols hadn't just been disabled, they'd crashed completely. Lynn stood in the cathedral-like space, surrounded by streams of corrupted data cascading through the air like digital rain. Behind her, Venri's crystalline form pulsed with nervous energy. This is unprecedented, they whispered, their surface reflecting the chaos around them. The temple's quantum cores are completely autonomous. They can't fail. They can't. They just did, Lynn said, her fingers dancing through the holographic interfaces. And it's not just here. Look. She pulled up emergency broadcasts from across the sector. Dozens of critical systems were failing simultaneously. Gravity generators, navigation arrays, even the supposedly infallible quantum communication networks. But Lynn wasn't looking at the failures. She was looking at the pattern between them. There, she said, isolating a sequence. Every system that's failing, they all share the same basic quantum architecture. The same perfect, flawless design that the collective's been using for millennia. Venri moved closer, their crystalline form refracting the data streams. But perfection is the goal. Every species in the collective strives for it. Even humans. No, Lynn interrupted, a memory surfacing from her childhood. Humans never reached for perfection. We couldn't. Our minds, our bodies, even our societies, they're all built on controlled chaos. Imperfection is our strength. She brought up the ancient records, the ones that had been locked away for so long. Look at these. Stories from the Exodus period. They're not just histories, they're warnings. Every civilization that survived had one thing in common: they embraced imperfection. Randomness. Chaos. The temple's lights flickered, and Lin felt a familiar sensation, like the moment before a storm breaks, when the air itself seems to hold its breath. Something's coming, she whispered. Something that uses perfection against itself. And the collective's perfect systems are like immune-compromised bodies. They have no defense against it. Venri's surface showed complex patterns of fear and realization. The quantum cores, they're all linked. If they fail completely. A deafening alarm cut through the air. Emergency containment fields sprang up around them as the temple's backup systems engaged. Through the translucent barriers, Lin could see more crystalline researchers rushing past, their forms showing patterns of panic she'd never seen before. Dr. Chen. Chief Researcher Ziwextal's voice boomed through the emergency channels. The outlying colonies, we've lost contact with 17 of them. Simultaneously. The quantum network, it's eating itself. Lin's mind raced, seeing patterns within patterns. The countdown she discovered wasn't just measuring time, it was measuring infection rates. Spread patterns. Like a virus, but one that attacked perfection itself. I need full access, she said. To everything. Every scrap of data from the Exodus period, every analysis of the failing systems, every. Granted, Ziwextal interrupted, their usual condescension replaced by raw fear. Whatever you need. Just, help us understand what's happening. Lin looked at her reflection in Venri's crystalline surface. In it, she saw not just herself, but every human who'd ever found patterns in chaos, who'd survived by embracing imperfection, who'd turned weakness into strength. I don't need to understand it, she said, her fingers already moving through new command sequences. I need to feel it. To see the patterns that your perfect systems can't. Because sometimes. She paused, watching as another wave of failures cascaded through the quantum networks. Sometimes the only way to fight chaos is with chaos. And humanity? We're the masters of controlled chaos. Around them, the temple's perfect systems continued to fail, one by one. But in the randomness of their destruction, Lin was beginning to see something else. Not just a pattern of attack, but a pattern of defense. One that only an imperfect mind could comprehend. The question was, would she be able to implement it before the collective's perfect civilization collapsed completely? You're not the only one seeing it. Lin's hands froze above the holographic controls as the message came through. It was from Earth's representative council, transmitted through the few remaining quantum channels that hadn't been corrupted. Across human space, others were reporting the same thing. A mining engineer in the Kuiper belt who'd noticed strange fluctuations in her equipment's quantum sensors. A terraforming specialist on Mars who'd documented unusual patterns in atmospheric processors. A deep space navigator who'd started having dreams about mathematical sequences she couldn't explain. Humans, all of them. And they were all seeing fragments of the same pattern. It's like catching movement from the corner of your eye, the council representative explained, her aged face showing lines of concern. None of our human scientists can quite grasp it directly, but we can feel it, Lin finished. Like our ancestors sensing a predator's presence without seeing it. In the background, she could hear Venri coordinating with other researchers, trying to salvage what they could from the failing quantum networks. The young crystalline had become her strongest ally, bridging the gap between human intuition and alien logic. The collective's founders believed they had achieved perfection, Venri said, their surface showing patterns of deep thought. They engineered away randomness, chaos, even the possibility of error. But in doing so, they engineered away their defenses, Lin said. She pulled up historical data from Earth, not the sanitized versions in the collective's archives, but raw histories filled with humanity's mistakes and triumphs. Look at human immune systems. They're messy, inefficient, sometimes they even attack themselves. But they adapt. They learn from chaos. A new alert flashed across her display. 3 more colonies had gone dark. But this time, there was something different about the pattern of their failure. "Wait," she said, her mind racing. "Show me the quantum core designs for those colonies." The schematics appeared, and Lynn felt that familiar tingle, the same sensation that had helped her ancestors read weather patterns in aching joints or sense earthquakes before instruments could detect them. "These colonies," she said slowly, "they were using older quantum cores. Imperfect ones, built before the collective's standardization protocols." Venri's surface rippled with realization. And they lasted longer against the corruption. But why? Lynn's fingers flew across the controls, pulling up more data. Because imperfection creates resistance. Like the way Earth diseases can't spread as easily through genetically diverse populations. These older cores, they're not all identical. They have variations, mutations. Flaws, Zwickstall's voice cut in. The chief researcher had been monitoring their work. "You're suggesting we deliberately introduce flaws into our perfect systems?" "I'm suggesting we already have the answer," Lynn said. She transmitted the data she'd been gathering from human observers across space. Every human who's noticed these patterns, we're all seeing them slightly differently. But together. She combined the reports, letting them flow together like streams joining a river. And there, in the confluence of thousands of imperfect human observations, a larger pattern emerged. "It's not just about seeing the pattern," she whispered. "It's about seeing all the ways the pattern could be different. All the ways it could change." Around them, the quantum networks continued to fail, but Lynn barely noticed. She was seeing something else now, not just the pattern of destruction, but the pattern of survival. And it was beautiful in its imperfection. "Every human who's observed this," she said, her voice growing stronger, "they're not just seeing what is. They're seeing what could be. The variations, the possibilities. The chaos," Venri finished, their surface showing patterns of dawning understanding. "Yes," Lynn said. "Because that's what humanity does. We don't just survive chaos, we thrive in it. We turn it into art, into music, into dreams." She looked at the failing systems around them, seeing not disaster but opportunity. "And now, we're going to turn it into salvation." Because sometimes, she realized, the greatest power isn't in creating perfect order. It's in finding the hidden patterns in chaos itself. And humanity had been practicing that art since the first human looked up at the stars and saw pictures in their random arrangement. The question was, could they harness that power in time to save not just themselves, but an entire civilization that had forgotten the strength of imperfection? The ancient archives were nothing like Lynn had expected. Instead of perfect quantum storage, she found crude markings etched into crystalline walls, rough sketches burned into metal plates, and primitive optical devices storing fragments of data. These were survivors' records, created by species who had abandoned their advanced technology to escape something. "They're beautiful," Venri whispered, their crystalline surface reflecting the ancient etchings. "Imperfect, but lasting," Lynn finished. "They survived because they couldn't be corrupted. Because they embraced analog chaos instead of digital perfection." She ran her fingers over one of the etchings, feeling its rough texture. The marking showed a pattern she recognized, the same one she'd first noticed in the quantum noise. But here, it wasn't a threat. It was a warning, left by those who had survived the first wave. "Chief Researcher," she called out, "I need every human observer we can reach. Not just scientists, artists, musicians, children, elders. Anyone who can look at patterns and see possibilities." Zwextal's holographic form flickered, the quantum networks were deteriorating faster now. You want to trust our civilization's survival to untrained observers? To dreamers? Yes, Lin said firmly. Because that's what we need right now. Not perfect analysis, but human insight. The ability to see patterns in chaos and chaos in patterns. The response was overwhelming. Across human space, thousands began sharing what they saw. A musician noticed that the corruption spread matched an ancient Earth melody. A child pointed out that the failing systems looked like a game of dominoes. An elder recognized the pattern from old weather prediction techniques. Each observation was different. Imperfect. But together. There, Lin said, combining the observations with the ancient warnings. It's not just a pattern of destruction. It's a key. The ancients didn't just leave warnings, they left instructions. But they encoded them in a way that only chaotic minds could understand. Venri's surface showed complex patterns of realization. Because they knew that whatever this is, it preys on perfect systems. On predictability. Exactly. Lin's fingers flew over the controls, combining human insights with alien technology. The pattern isn't the weapon, it's the vaccine. But it had to be discovered by minds that could embrace chaos. That could see the flaw as the solution. A new alert blared. The quantum corruption had reached the core worlds. They had hours, maybe minutes, before the entire collective fell. We need to introduce controlled chaos into the quantum networks, Lin explained, her mind racing ahead of her words. Not to destroy them, but to make them resistant. Like releasing a weakened virus to build immunity. But the amount of processing power needed to calculate all the possible variations. Zwextal began. We don't calculate them, Lin interrupted. We feel them. Every human observer sees the pattern differently, that's our strength. We'll use those variations to create a quantum matrix that's deliberately, perfectly imperfect. She looked at the failed systems around them, seeing not destruction but transformation. The ancients knew this would happen again. They knew that eventually, some civilization would push too far toward perfection. Would make themselves vulnerable to whatever this is. And they knew, Venri added, their surface showing patterns of wonder, that only beings who embraced chaos could save those who had rejected it. Lin nodded, feeling the weight of centuries of human evolution, all those generations of pattern seekers who had survived by seeing meaning in randomness, by finding order in chaos, by turning imperfection into strength. We have one chance, she said, initiating the broadcast sequence. To save the collective, we have to break it first. We have to make it embrace the very chaos it engineered away. Around them, the quantum networks continued to fail, but now each failure felt like a heartbeat, a pulse, a rhythm that only human minds could fully grasp. And in that rhythm, Lin could feel something else emerging, not the death of civilization, but its rebirth. Through the power of human pattern recognition, they weren't just finding a solution. They were rediscovering a truth the ancients had known all along, that true resilience comes not from achieving perfection, but from embracing the beautiful, unpredictable chaos of life itself. The collective central quantum core pulsed with unstable energy as Lin initiated the transformation sequence. Thousands of human observers across space had shared their unique interpretations of the pattern, each one slightly different, each one vital. Now those variations were being woven together into something unprecedented, a deliberately imperfect quantum matrix. The core is rejecting the new patterns, Zwextal reported, their crystalline form showing stress fractures. It's programmed to eliminate any deviation from perfection. Then we'll give it more deviation than it can handle, Lin said. She opened channels to every human observer still connected. Everyone, don't try to focus on the pattern. Let your minds wander. See the shapes it reminds you of, the feelings it gives you, the memories it triggers. The response was immediate and overwhelming. A retired pilot saw constellations from Earth's night sky. A young artist found rhythms that matched ancient cave paintings. A grandmother recognized patterns from old quilting designs passed down through generations. Each observation created ripples in the quantum matrix, transforming its rigid perfection into something more organic, more alive. But the corruption was spreading faster than they could implement the changes. The outer sectors are gone, Venri reported, their surface flickering with distress. The pattern, it's evolving. Adapting. Lynn felt a chill as she realized the truth. It's not just corrupting our systems, she whispered. It's learning from them. Every perfect system it destroys makes it stronger, more efficient, more perfect, Zwextal finished, their voice carrying a new understanding. We engineered our own destruction by pursuing perfection at all costs. But Lynn was seeing something else now, a deeper pattern within the chaos. She brought up the ancient warnings again, seeing them with new eyes. The ancients didn't just survive this, she said. They understood it. Look at these markings, they're not just warnings, they're a record of evolution. Of adaptation. Of balance, Venri said, their surface showing patterns of revelation. Between order and chaos. Between perfection and life, Lynn finished. She turned to the quantum core's main interface. We've been trying to fight the corruption with our patterns. But what if we need to do the opposite? What if we need to let it in? Zwextal's form rippled with alarm. That would destroy everything we've built. No, Lynn said, her mind racing ahead. It would transform it. Like a forest fire that looks like destruction but actually promotes new growth. We don't need to stop the pattern, we need to guide it. To show it a different kind of perfection. She opened a direct channel to the quantum core, bypassing the safety protocols. Around them, the last perfect systems began to fail, but Lynn barely noticed. She was seeing the bigger pattern now, the one that connected everything, human intuition, alien technology, ancient wisdom, and the very nature of existence itself. Every human observer, she broadcast, stop trying to understand the pattern. Instead, think about what makes us human. Our doubts, our fears, our hopes, our dreams. All the beautiful imperfections that make us who we are. The quantum core's energy readings went wild as thousands of human minds poured their chaotic, imperfect, gloriously human thoughts into the system. The pattern of corruption met something it had never encountered before, minds that embraced chaos, that found strength in weakness, that turned imperfection into art. And in that moment, as human consciousness met cosmic chaos, something extraordinary began to happen. The pattern didn't just stop, it changed. Like a river meeting the sea, like day flowing into night, like all the natural cycles that the collective had tried to engineer away, the corruption began to transform into something new. It's not destroying the systems anymore, Venri reported, their surface showing patterns of awe. It's redesigning them. Making them more like us, Lynn said softly. Imperfect. Adaptable. Alive. The quantum core pulsed one final time, and in its light, Lynn saw the future, not a perfect universe of flawless machines, but a living cosmos of endless variation, where order and chaos danced in eternal balance, and where the greatest strength lay not in eliminating flaws, but in learning to grow through them. The question was, were they ready for a universe that reflected not the perfection they had sought, but the beautiful chaos they had tried to escape? 1 year later, the Galactic Research Institute looked very different. Gone were the perfect crystalline structures and flawless quantum matrices. In their place stood something new, a hybrid of organic and technological architecture that seemed to pulse with life itself. Lynn stood at a window overlooking the transformed space station, her reflection overlapping with the stars beyond. Beside her, Venri's crystalline form had changed too, showing natural variations that would have been unthinkable in the old collective. The Council of Elders is ready, Venri said, their surface rippling with gentle light patterns that had evolved in the months since the transformation. They're eager to hear your insights. Lin smiled, thinking of how much had changed. The new council wasn't just made up of the most advanced species anymore, it included representatives from every civilization, chosen not for their perfection but for their wisdom, their experience, their ability to see patterns in the chaos of life itself. You know, she said, running her hand along the living wall beside her, my grandmother used to say that wisdom isn't about knowing all the answers. It's about understanding which questions to ask. The chamber they entered was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Some were ancient species who had survived the original exodus, others were younger civilizations still learning to embrace imperfection. All of them turned to watch as Lin approached the center of the room. 1 year ago, she began, we faced extinction because we forgot something fundamental about the nature of existence. We thought progress meant eliminating chaos, engineering away uncertainty, reaching for an impossible perfection. The quantum displays around them showed images of the transformation, the moment when human pattern recognition had turned a cosmic threat into an evolutionary leap forward. But the true power, she continued, the power that saved us all, wasn't in our technology or our intelligence. It was in our ability to embrace imperfection. To see patterns in chaos and possibility in uncertainty. It was in the wisdom that comes not from eliminating mistakes, but from learning from them. She gestured to the transformed station around them. Look at what we've created together. Systems that aren't perfect, but resilient. Technology that doesn't reject chaos, but learns from it. A civilization that doesn't fear change, but grows through it. An elder from one of the ancient survivor species spoke up, their voice carrying centuries of wisdom. You humans kept this gift alive when the rest of us engineered it away. The ability to trust intuition, to learn from experience, to see meaning in randomness. Yes, Lin said, but not because we were better. Because we never stopped being students of life itself. Every human who helped save us, from children seeing shapes in the patterns to elders recognizing rhythms from their long experience, they all contributed something unique. Something beautifully, perfectly imperfect. The displays showed scenes from across the transformed galaxy, hybrid technologies that adapted like living things, civilizations learning to embrace uncertainty as a source of strength, younger species being mentored by those who had learned to balance order and chaos. The hidden power that shocked the universe wasn't just pattern recognition, Lin concluded. It was the wisdom to know that true strength comes from embracing our imperfections. That real progress isn't about eliminating chaos, but about learning to dance with it. She touched the living wall beside her, feeling its gentle pulse. Every one of us carries this wisdom within us. Every experience we've had, every mistake we've made, every pattern we've recognized, they're all part of the greater pattern. The pattern of life itself. Around them, the transformed quantum networks hummed with a new kind of energy, not the rigid perfection of the old collective, but the vibrant, chaotic, beautiful harmony of countless minds learning, growing, and evolving together. This is our legacy, Lin said softly. Not to reach for an impossible perfection, but to remain forever curious, forever learning, forever seeing new patterns in the endless dance of existence. Because in the end, the greatest power isn't in knowing everything. It's in never stopping to learn, Venri finished, their surface showing patterns of deep understanding. As Lin looked out at the assembled beings, she saw not just the future of civilization, but the triumph of a uniquely human gift, the ability to find meaning in mystery, to see possibility in chaos, and to turn the very imperfections that others feared into the source of their greatest strength. And in that moment, she understood that they had done more than just save civilization. They had reminded the universe of something it had forgotten, that the most beautiful patterns are the ones that can never be perfected, only experienced, shared, and passed on to those wise enough to see the power in imperfection itself.